Hi, this is Dr. Lucas Kowalczyk, founder and CEO of ProSketch. Last week, we introduced our series with an article that gave a broad overview of the various topics and initiatives your practice should be considering when implementing its readiness and action plan. Before I get too far into this article on telehealth, I just wanted to extend a huge thank you to all of our frontline healthcare workers and staff battling COVID-19. Thank you to all of you for doing such an incredible job on tackling this unprecedented pandemic. You all are keeping your communities as safe and as healthy as possible, and we owe you a huge debt of gratitude. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So this week, we're going to be discussing telehealth, a very hot topic as it allows practices to continue seeing patients while maintaining social distancing requirements, which is critical. The main topics we'll be covering today include vendor selection, stakeholders, security, and going live. First, vendor selection. The most critical piece of advice I can think of is reliability over bells and whistles. What you're going to need right now is reliability of service uptime. If you think of telehealth as video conferencing, then you can just think of the demand on video conferencing services right now across our country. Most people are working from home, and that is placing a huge server demand across the country for video and audio, two very data intensive resources. So as a result, you want a service provider that has the ability to scale up the demand during peak service hours, mainly 8 to 5 business hours. In order to accommodate this, only certain vendors can really do this to any great degree of scale. So Microsoft, Google, Amazon, these are the companies that can really scale up very, very quickly. They have huge server footprints, and they are already bracing and preparing their resources for the increased video and audio demand. If I was to pick any one vendor, I would personally go with Microsoft Teams, and that's not because I have any particular stock or I'm sponsored in any sort of way by them. It's simply because they are a dominant player in the healthcare market, and so they understand the importance of uptime in healthcare settings. Also, they supply a lot of government services, so their compliance and regulation and service uptime really needs to be impeccable, and they typically do a very good job of that. If you want to go with a smaller vendor as well, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure to be clear about their ability to ramp up during peak hour usage and their ability to provide service during those times. Next up, the stakeholders. So here, when you're going to finally implement whatever vendor you selected, really critical. Communicate, communicate, communicate. You really want to get all of your relevant stakeholders on board. And the first and primary stakeholder is actually your support staff. They're going to be the ones running the bulk of your telemedicine program. And what do I mean by that? Well, they're going to be running the scheduling for telemedicine, and they're also going to be running the majority of troubleshooting. So you're really going to want to make sure that they understand the system that you're implementing, and also soliciting feedback from them about potential trouble spots that they see or points of confusion. And remember also, your staff is dealing with a lot. They may be running at reduced capacity, pulling double duty on various responsibilities. So adding in a new additional workflow to them, that may require quite a bit from them. So just be mindful of that as well. Next relevant stakeholder are your patients. And here it kind of dovetails in with your staff. you're going to want to go through the entire process of a patient connecting to your telehealth system. So what does that mean? Most telehealth systems will send out an email or require an app download and or both. So you really want to know what that experience will be like for the patient. How will they connect into the meeting? You have to really understand that process. And also test the solution on multiple devices. So I'm talking computer, desktop, or Mac. Test it on tablets and phones. And make sure to do it on Android and iOS. This will be really critical because there sometimes are little nuances between operating system and devices that you'll want to know about so your staff can effectively troubleshoot this. Next up are physicians. Physicians, I kind of saved till the later stages of your stakeholders because while obviously very important, they're going to be mostly on the conferencing side of things and connecting. And so here, basic training for them about how they're going to receive their notification, how is troubleshooting for the patient going to work. And by troubleshooting, just have them know some basic troubleshooting tips so they can facilitate connection if there's any problems. This might include them knowing how to get a speaker to work on a patient's device or how to flip the camera around. And I know some physicians will have varying degrees of comfort level with doing this. You may need to actually have a staff member with certain physicians to really facilitate this for them. So this will kind of be a judgment call by you on which physicians are able to troubleshoot versus which physicians may need some extra resources and hands-on help from you. And that will be critical to figure out. Also, what's really important for your physician stakeholders, knowing how to document the telehealth visit. So one of the things that they have to do is document a telehealth consent, and a lot of these telehealth visits are billed on time, and because your physical exam is limited, you're probably going to be billing a 99213 or an 03 for a new consult visit. So just be sure that your providers have the appropriate consent and medical decision making based on time statements in there, and you can provide them a block of text or they can build one out in their EHR as well. Finally, your IT service provider. Good idea to plug them in on this process as well. Let them know what you're doing. Do they have any suggestions on your network, or could they even offer suggestions on the vendor themselves? So pull them in to make sure that everything is provisioned appropriately. We'll talk about how they can help with security measures for work devices in the next section, but they're also going to be a critical stakeholder for you. So let's move into security next. Even though there's been some relaxation around HIPAA requirements for telehealth, I would still say you want to go with a vendor that's experienced, that has a business associates agreement that you can sign, because there's a big difference between using WhatsApp for consumer purposes and for commercial purposes. Commercial grade services have certain uptime requirements, they have encryption protocols, and really those are the providers that you're going to be able to depend on. Remember my first rule there in vendor selection is reliability over bells and whistles. Some of these consumer grade applications may be good if you are having trouble connecting with your main telehealth service. They can be a reasonable fallback option for you. So do consider them as a fallback. And remember, you can also always use a telephone line and bill a telephone consult as well. Another important point to consider on security will be your HIPAA requirements for working from home. People forget about this, but there are requirements for HIPAA and remote workforces. And some of the big things are, number one, that your employees are accessing the internet via a password protected Wi-Fi network. That's really important. Number two, that you want to consider how they're accessing your environment. So if they're using a personal device, you may want to consider a VPN or remote desktop to access your environment. And this is where your IT service provider comes into play. They can help you set all that up. Or if they're working on a work issue device, you're going to want to consider making sure that that device is up to standards from malware and all security protocols and all software updates. And that's really, again, where your IT service provider can come into play. And one of the big things that you really have to consider in this scenario is not downloading any PHI to local machines. That's really a big no-no, and you really want to emphasize that to your staff that they cannot do that. And maybe even just some additional training on that front may be very helpful for them to remind them about those requirements in privacy about them working from home. So let's talk about going live. You've selected a vendor, you've communicated to all your stakeholders, and now you're ready to go live. So what's the main important thing here is, once again, communication and tolerance. You're probably implementing this over the course of the week, making a very, very quick decision here and trying to get this implemented rapidly. So expect some mistakes, expect some things to not go smoothly, and really over the course of 1 to 2 days, set up a mechanism that you can really gather the troubleshooting points very quickly and then disseminate out solutions for those trouble points very easily. And that's going to be really critical. Have an open mind, be patient with your staff. They're working furiously as well to get caught up to speed on this new workflow. So that's going to be really critical. Also, with going live, make sure that your staff is calling patients 30 minutes before their appointment, making sure that they've downloaded everything. So there's a little bit of hand-holding there, but just think about it like your regular check-in process to your clinic that they have to go through. And so I really think that that covers the main important topics of rapidly and effectively implementing telehealth in your practice. I hope you find these tips useful, and maybe just, even if you're already doing this, use this as a backstop to double check if you've missed anything. From our perspective, we would love to hear more about topics that you think we have missed or not covered, and we'd love for you to share them with our community. Share them via comments on our website or via LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you. Also, a huge thank you to all of you for continuing to provide medical care in your communities under such difficult circumstances. All of you are also keeping your communities as safe and as healthy as possible, and your communities owe you a huge debt of gratitude as well. So thank you so much. You all are doing just fantastic work. We look forward to connecting with you on our website and via LinkedIn, so please reach out, and we'll see you next week for another article. Take care and good luck.